Across the companies we have studied recently, the average share of project budgets allocated to UX was 11%. This is the average across companies that do UX. Well, since many companies still don't do any UX, the average across all companies in the world will be lower. But if you do UX, the average budget is 11% right now. This percentage has increased compared to studies in the past. The UX budget share tends to go up by 1 or 2 percentage points each decade, which I think will continue until we hit about 25% for UX. This would mean that a quarter of your development budget will be spent figuring out what to do, and the other 3/4 will be spent implementing that thing. But right now, the average is 11%. Now, average obviously means that some projects will spend more on UX and others will spend less. How do you determine whether to be above or below the average? 2 main approaches. The first is simply to assess how important it is to make the design the best it possibly can be. If there's a lot at stake, invest more in UX. For example, if you have millions of users, or if the product is worth billions of dollars, you should spend more on UX than if you have a few thousand users, or if your company will ever only make a few $100,000 from the product. The second approach is to assess how big the risk is of failing because you get the design wrong. In general, UX is risk management. You invest upfront to increase the likelihood of shipping something good that does not have to be fixed later at great expense. Several criteria combine to define the level of risk in a design project. Most of these criteria relate to how much you already know about the type of product you're designing. First of all, are you using an established technology, or are you pioneering something new? Let's say you're designing a website. Well, then you can leverage 30 years of existing user research and industry experience with what makes for a good website. Back when the web was new, people didn't know any better, and many companies designed bloated sites that took forever to load. If they had been running usability studies of those bloated sites, they would have known that this was a bad design approach. Now, after 30 years, our collective experience should tell you that fast response times are better. If you're designing for a completely new technology, then there is no existing research to leverage, and you can't look at successful and failed products for lessons. There will be no best practice usability guidelines to follow. In this case, you must invest a lot more in extensive user research. And you should experiment with a wide range of alternate designs before you can hope to have hit on something good. It's not just whether something is completely new to the entire world. It also matters whether you're designing something that you, your team, and your company have already done before. If you're designing the 5th release of an existing certain product, you should already know its users, and you should have gained substantial insights into designing that type of features from research with the first 4 releases. In fact, those 4 releases count as early prototypes of your new design because they give you lessons about the UX of different approaches to the kinds of features you will be shipping, assuming that you already did good UX work with the previous releases. You can get away with less research for the 5th release. It's not just a matter of technology and features. The users are even more important. If you're targeting the same audience as you've already designed for many times before, then you don't need to study them as much as you would need to do if you're planning to serve a new target audience of people you've never designed for before. Of course, for all these issues, I assumed that you had been doing substantial UX work in the past so that you can build on those results. If your previous releases were done without good UX, That's a strong warning signal that you need to spend a lot on UX this time around. Generally speaking, the more you already know, the more you can draw on that knowledge instead of having to do extensive research from scratch. And the more you're trying new things, the higher the risk, and thus the more thorough you should be in your UX efforts. But even if you know a lot, you can never know everything, and there will always be surprises in any design project. So don't skip UX completely. Lower risk means less UX work. It doesn't mean no UX work.